I'm not gonna lie, I'm kinda getting tired of Act-Man's act. I used to be a fan of the guy a few years ago, around when COVID came along. I was home a lot and ended up finding his channel and binging a bunch of his reviews and analysis of games. I liked his lack of hesitation when it came to pointing out negative stuff within the industry, like laziness in game development, predatory monetization, and the stupidity of chasing elusive live service dreams. He was just a regular dude, passionate about video games. In many ways I still saw him that way, even after I moved on to other interests and stopped watching his content regularly. But now, recently, he's been popping up again, even to someone who had stopped following him, and not for a good reason. And I find it difficult to figure out if he's still that kind of creator or something else. And that is what I intend on calling out and reflecting on in this video. I believe everyone is entitled to making whatever kind of content they want to make. This is why when Andy Pants made his Woke YouTubers video where he calls out a couple of creators, including the Act-Man, for not talking about certain topics and things going on in the games industry, I disagreed with him. My video on the matter was simply focused on Andy's dumb arguments that the billionaires, aka the executives, the CEOs and the investors of video game companies who spent the entire last decade trying to take every cent they could from us via predatory monetization that even got governmental attention down on them, were actually on our side and wanted to give us the games that we want, but the supposed LGBT cabal inside of these studios weren't letting them. Regardless, in it, I defended those YouTubers' rights of choosing not to make videos centered on these divisive matters, as it is each one of us' decision and responsibility on what type of content we want to make, and I could understand someone not wanting to divide their massive fan bases with these topics, especially if their videos are apolitically centered on the content itself. A good example of this is Mauler's content. He's a guy who can fully break down a piece of entertainment down to its bones without touching on any political or ideological matters whatsoever, even if those pieces of media he's analyzing may have been negatively influenced by it. He simply strips everything down to its core and points out the creative failures of a bad piece of media, and I completely admire his ability to do so. And it makes perfect sense that he and the other fellas over at EFAP, for example, would stay away from deep diving into ideological matters. As I said, it is each person's right to shape the genre of their channels. No one should feel obligated to talk about something that they don't want to engage with or that they are simply not interested in. And this goes double when it comes to videos about very complicated and potentially toxic matters such as DEI injections in entertainment media, activists in high positions such as Sweet Baby Inc. within entertainment media, and even more complex matters such as intersectional feminism and other ideological influences subtly changing things in our games and other sources of entertainment based solely on ulterior motives that are not focused on the enrichment of the actual piece of fiction that they're producing, and are instead more interested in using the medium as a vehicle to push their ideological and political beliefs, almost like subtly and sometimes not so subtly banging our heads with lessons of morality and political correctness, otherwise known as
the message.
These are things that are complicated to even identify in many cases, and sometimes some failures of the piece of media are nothing more and nothing less than good old incompetence, so diving into it can be a minefield and can very quickly turn into heavy political matters. And this is not to go into everything else that surrounds it, like how influential the gaming journalism and excess media journalism are, and how they have proven to go as far as to lie and misrepresent matters to serve their agendas, such as the situation with Black Myth Wukong, the almost situation with Space Marine 2, and the constant occurrences of masking every bit of criticism lobbed at any protected piece of media, be it games or shows or movies, as alt-right, bigoted, ist and phobic attacks from irrelevant loud minorities online, completely shutting down all discourse around the matter and pushing forth the narrative that anyone questioning these issues is one of those vile things, and totally ignoring the fact that with each and every single additional thing that they push, more and more people become further and further disinterested in these pieces of media, hence their recent financial flops, and of course the true reason as to why this discourse grows louder and more constant, with seemingly every announcement of a new game or show or movie getting mired in often very toxic arguments online because of both extremes coming to blows. Like I said, deeply complicated and divisive matters that are not there just to be brushed over and require at least a small level of seriousness and maturity to actually dive into. These are things that can absolutely poison a channel, especially if it's a channel that built its fanbase on completely different content. This is something that even I am afraid of. I started making my content because of being sick of it all and wanting to be another voice against it, but one that aspires to use common sense and call out whatever bullshit I find wrong, no matter what side it is coming from, hence the videos on Independence. But this is still not the type of road that I want to go down perpetually. I wish to eventually carry on making videos about games, as it is what I am mostly passionate about. Videos about praising the things that I love and roasting the things that I don't. Talking about the industry, doing retrospectives, commenting on things that I find problematic and on things that I find exciting. Calling out predatory monetization schemes and telling executives who think we shouldn't be comfortable owning our games to go fuck themselves. Hell, maybe even making cringy top 10 lists. I don't really care. I just want to share my love of this medium through topics devoid of the toxicity involving these political and ideological matters. But for now, that is hard to avoid, through no fault of our own. Every other week there is something else going on, and we're still very much in the thick of it. And so, here I am, at least until things calm down.
I would gladly retire from the world, were such a day to dawn.
But in regards to the Actman, it seems that my assessment was wrong. I don't think the Actman is not willing to go deeper into these kinds of matters in his content. I think he's very happy to do so. He's just either completely uneducated on these matters and therefore deeply conflicted on what to think, or disingenuously pretending that he cares and wants to have a moderate conversation, but in reality he's already made up his mind a long time ago and has no such genuine interest whatsoever, while also refusing to admit this onto himself and even to his audience. If the Actman didn't have an interest in shifting his content towards this kind of thing, I would have no qualms with it whatsoever, because it's understandable by the situations that I just got done mentioning. But from what I keep seeing, this is not the case at all. The Actman is perfectly happy to lean into these matters and talk about them. He's just not happy to actually do it in good faith, with good intentions, or with any interest in the matter whatsoever. And what is particularly annoying with the way that he conducts himself in these matters is this duality that he seems to have. On one hand, he presents himself as just this dude, neutral, chill, willing to participate in moderate conversation, have a debate, lay things down, reflect on them, and maybe even attempt to find a common ground. But on the other hand, he's on the far opposite side of that. He claims he's sick of this supposed pussy-ass political ideologues masquerading as gaming content creators who serve only to invade our gaming space and shove political agendas down the throats of any unfortunate enough to consume their dogshit content. He even calls them parasites, just like I do. At face value, it's like, hey, common ground with me, because I too am sick of these political ideologues masquerading as gaming content creators, except I go a step higher and point at the actual people to blame for these political injections into the gaming space. I'm sick of political ideologues and activists masquerading as developers, directors, actors, writers, etc. in the actual leading positions of these entertainment industries. Hell, let's even be honest here, they don't even masquerade as anything. They proudly display what their functions are and their radical opinions. This is what often gets them hired in the first place, since their politics are the correct and approved ones to have in the corporate space right now. Many of them even proudly display their disdain for their own communities by inciting divisiveness, with us versus them bullshit mentalities and attitudes that often result in comments such as "don't like it, don't buy it," or "don't like it, don't watch it," as they happily take pre-established successful IPs, fully knowing that only through them can they actually be relevant. Only through them can they actually have an impact, because if starting their own shit with their own IPs, no one will care. Everyone has always been able to have their own space within our industry. Their narrative that there are gatekeepers is total bullshit. No one gatekeeps the gaming space. What people do is complain when their established franchises are twisting and mangling themselves to appeal to other people based off of ideological shit that does not belong in entertainment. Take She-Hulk, for example. that was a show where the writers decided to purposefully make a shitty show to quote-unquote troll the trolls. And then, when people complained about how terrible it was, the showrunner came out proudly stating how smart and intelligent she was because she had written the entire thing 3 years ago and was able to perfectly guess what the reaction to her shitty show would be. This is taken as a moment of pride and wittiness, but in reality, it's just someone invading the space of comics, taking a beloved character such as She-Hulk and ruining a show on purpose, just to go against the established fanbase. This is the same kind of dogshit attitude that we find ourselves with here in the gaming space. People taking over established franchises who have established fanbases and like what they like, and being told that they're wrong for liking it, and that now things will be done differently, and then when people react and get mad, or don't engage with the product and it flops, they are blamed for being toxic, gatekeeping gamers. This is just a single example of many in the entertainment industry, and if you think that this is irrelevant and not going to hit the gaming space, think again. It happened to comics years ago, it started hitting the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Disney, Star Wars, and just about anything that they touch really, just a couple of years ago, among other examples that we'll get into in just a second. And now, this stuff is visibly spreading and taking hold of the gaming space as well. In reality, companies with activists like Sweet Baby Inc. could just have their own original games in their own corners of the gaming space, flopping on their own if they sucked like Dustborn, or hey, who knows, maybe even finding a nice audience that makes it work in relation to the much smaller production budget that would go into these games, rather than taking as big a chance with diversifying the fan bases of expensive AAA games that can go up to hundreds of millions of dollars in budget. Why is it that Sweet Baby Inc. and other DEI-focused entities target these big studios and publishers instead of simply providing their consultation work on smaller studios? Well, shit, because you stand to gain a lot more traction, whether it be in your goals to take over the industry and the kind of content that gets made in it, or your goal to burn the industry to the ground by attaching yourself to AAA titans with huge franchises rather than smaller games from smaller studios that reach far less people. Take note of the language that they use and what they do. Their desire is not to carve their own spot to find their own communities within this massive and open gaming space of ours, with a wide variety of successful genres and franchises. Their goal isn't to share this space with us. Their desire is to inject themselves into other spaces, other communities who they admittedly despise, and they do it all under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusivity, the three most bastardized words of current day. This is the shit that the Act Man refuses to acknowledge. He prefers instead to act as if he cares for moderate discussion of these matters, and then engage with morons like Andy Pants, whose arguments are about as strong as those that you'd get from a mute with no hands, or with dumbass lists like this from his video, where he bravely explores the arguments of the other side through a fucking retarded list that nobody cares or actually takes seriously, and then goes through it and constantly makes references to quote-unquote these people as he dismantles arguments that no one seriously makes. Well, that list is so incredibly retarded that it contains games that not even Andy Pants himself, the patron saint of calling nearly everything woke and gay, would ever argue to be woke. And even if he did, it wouldn't matter, because it was irrelevant. Andy Pants is an example of the type of unhinged, anti-woke content creator that is simply out here grifting at a literal level, with a history of different channels and opinions. He doesn't think about these matters, he doesn't even care to have a mature discussion about it, he doesn't dive into why some of these games and shows are problematic, and he doesn't make a single delineation between examples of good diversity and examples of actual immersion-breaking, ideological injections of propaganda. He puts on an act for his audience, he shapes his opinions for his audience, and in many ways he is a detriment to the real conversation around these matters, and in that regard, the Act Man is not much better himself. It's incredibly easy to take apart stupid bullshit lists like those. I could do it too if I wanted to, but the fact is that nobody fucking cares about that. Take the shades off and get serious with me here for a second. There is no palpable narrative about Red Dead Redemption 2 being woke. There is no palpable narrative for Space Marines 2 being woke. And the same goes for many other games on that list. And even in the cases of Baldur's Gate 3, aside from a tiny minority who go hard as fuck on this, like Candy Pants and some other people who are lost in the sauce, there is still no palpable narrative around that game being woke either. The dominant speech surrounding Baldur's Gate 3 was nothing but positivity and praise for how to deliver a full experience, rich in content and detail, for a fair price with no monetization bullshit. You wanna make content making fun of that list and of people who say shit like that? Go right ahead, it's funny. But keep 3 things in mind first. Number 1, don't disingenuously present it as the overall narrative, because it's not. Number 2, don't attach it, relate it, attribute it, generalize it, whatever the fuck other word you want to use here, to everyone else who is having these discussions. And number 3, don't brush this crap off as the same arguments out there that are actually worth discussing and listening to because of them having valid reasons for concern or valid shady shit attached to them, simply because you're not willing to take them seriously and engage with them. By doing these things as you did in your video, all you're doing is presenting yourself as a dumbass or as a fake, trying to draw people's attention away from actually important discourse by presenting them with retarded shit to point and laugh to and go, hey guys, look at this is so ridiculous, how could we ever take these people seriously? Oh my god, woke because a woman in it, woke because an improbable black guy in it, woke because there's a pride flag in a cosmetic menu, woke because you can't have a gay and bi relationship.
You see, it's not just what games they classify as woke, it's also the reasons and the recommendation. It's crazy that like that's all they need, like that just this, like a pride flag in a game, even if it's an optional cosmetic, you can't even have that. Like they don't even want that. You see how reductive these types of like woke labels become when they actually have to write down what's woke about it instead of just pointing at women and being like, women, they're woke, you know? It's like it becomes very reductive and stupid. That's like, to these people, that's like a warning flag. You see how stupid, how fucking easy it is to just point out like minorities and women and say, look at the wokeness, game's woke. That really is what it comes down to. It's like, okay, we want politics in games, just the right politics, just the right, like Alex Jones, who's never had a bad opinion ever. And if they did this for racism and sexism, wouldn't that just be insane to be like, oh, this game is racist, a black guy gets killed in it? I feel like that would be the exact same shit. I don't get it. I don't get these people.
What are you, fucking stupid?
Come on, dude, this is nothing. This is pissing in the rain. When you see an actual palpable narrative with a lot of people talking about it, the least you could do is put your ego away and explore it first, or at least try to figure out if there's something to be had there, instead of just sweeping it all under the same parasite political ideologue content creator rug, which is so crazy ironic as well. The actual irony of using those exact words, but only for a few fucking content creators, such as Melanie Mack, which is very likely who that tweet was for, given the timing between your tweets here, but not actually using them towards the people who are actually in a position of power and that can actually affect the outcome of our games. Hell, have already affected the outcome of our games, and our TV shows, our movies, our comics, fuck, and that's just to leave it here and not get into the societal harm that they're posing as well. It's a pretty nuts thing to do, man. And this is the core problem here. Unlike Andy and his audience's personal issues with you, it's not because you don't make videos or comments on woke stuff. You actually just did, after all. It's not because you don't talk about ugly characters. Hell, I even pointed out in my video that you did make comments about Concord characters being ugly. It's not because of any of this nonsense. All of this crap is pointless and superficial anyway. It's because you do actually make this content, and you do talk about this stuff, but you utterly and completely misrepresent the truth of the actual matters. Whether that is because of not knowing about it, not agreeing with it, or not caring about it beyond putting on your own act towards your audience, it doesn't really matter. It's still wrong nonetheless. It's still totally missing the point, but worse than that, it's twisting and filtering it to hand feed some bullshit to your audience. And the reason why I even say it's bullshit is because of the fact that you supposedly did look up all of this stuff earlier this year. You looked up what Sweet Baby Inc. was when all of this shit blew out onto the public. You saw what it is that they and other consultant companies like theirs do, and you saw the reason why they do it. You saw that by hiring these DEI-injecting consultants, companies get all sorts of very favorable monetary incentives, and you even admitted to finding it sickening. And even if you would flip your meaning at the time and say that it was simply because it ruined the narrative direction of Soy Squad, it still doesn't change the fact of what it is that these companies do, and it still doesn't change the fact that it is ideologically driven. You can't fix the problem until you acknowledge the entire problem and tackle it directly. You can't just complain of bad writing while pretending like the shit that caused that bad writing in the first place doesn't exist and we're all a bunch of lunatics whenever we call something out. Just like yourself, that is when I learned about it too. Up until earlier this year, I didn't know about any companies like Sweet Baby Inc. I didn't know about companies like BlackRock. I didn't believe any such agendas just because someone said so. Whenever I saw a bad piece of writing or a stupid narrative decision, I chalked it up to it just being that. And most of all, I never believed any company would purposefully shoot themselves in the foot by writing quote-unquote woke crap, a word that I don't even like using even now, because I much prefer describing exactly what a thing is, rather than just using an empty, meaningless word like woke, which have just become a speedrun route for people who want to ignore and dismiss everything that you're saying, to use as an excuse to, well, to ignore and dismiss everything that you're saying, especially the uncomfortable truths. Because what companies wanted most of all was money. They don't care about any of this LGBT stuff, for example. They'll proudly display their flags and celebrate pride in developed progressive Western countries while hiding it in the countries where it would actually help to show their support. Little did I know, however, about the ESG system, how it works, and how it granted them financial benefits. So I know that you're not just some dude who never heard about any of this and is just refusing to believe something that sounds like Dr. Doom nonsense. I've been there myself, I know how easy it is to dismiss it, but after that entry point that was Sweet Baby Inc., you should at the very least, have had the fucking conscious ability to see something and think twice before going off as if all of this shit was completely devoid of any validity at all. Honestly, even without the Sweet Baby Inc. situation, that is something that I would refrain from doing, especially considering my platform if it was as big as yours. I believe you do that because the information doesn't agree with you. And like some other morons who just lose their composure when someone is criticizing their piece of media, you lose yours, instead of inquiring, or at the very least not engaging on the off chance that they may have a point, since you really don't engage to begin with and just go straight to insults. It takes one hell of a splash of arrogance to assume that you have the only correct opinion about something, especially when it is something that you haven't looked into and lack information on, and that runs very deep. It's an ugly attitude, and it's once again on display here. Is Melanie Mac right? Is she wrong? I don't know, and I don't particularly care either, but she just expressed an opinion, and it isn't even an opinion that is solely hers, and most importantly, it isn't the only sign of concern for Halo Studios, considering their appointing of a DEI-focused chief of staff and of a guy who doesn't like guns as the producer of a first-person shooter. And before you drift off into, oh, woke because person cannot have political opinion or be able to work on something just because they don't like guns. Let me just stop you right there and say that you can totally not like guns and be an advocate for better gun control laws while also working on shooters. But by this guy's own admittance, he can separate the two. He says he straight up could never work on stuff like COD or Battlefield because of the more realistic setting, and that in Halo he struggles, but gets by because of the sci-fi setting allowing for a better separation of reality and fiction. But if you struggle, even with just the concept of guns and shooting in a completely fictional setting, doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty or a fucking AK-47 mod in Lord of the Rings, you should not be working on shooters. Your head is just not in it. If you can't find guns cool in a fictional concept and find the value in making impactful mechanics to refine that FPS feel, then you have two big issues standing in the way of providing the best shooter experience for your players. But let's get back to the Act Man. I've seen this spicy attitude before. You have gone down this road before and you ended up looking like an idiot. When Az's Starfield rant popped up, you completely lost your composure. You didn't bother to check for context, you didn't bother to inquire about any single thing, and you didn't bother to just let it be and mind your business. Instead, you made your assumptions and attacked him, no holds barred. Gorilla-shaped man on the verge of crying because Starfield lets you pick pronouns at the start of the game and then it's never brought up again. Somebody please shoot this guy. With a bear tranquilizer, he's going to attack someone. And then when someone tried to simmer you down by telling you he's great, just a passionate person speaking his mind like many other creators out there, you retorted that he's great at making people that criticize pronoun use look like a bunch of shit-eating cavemen. I'd love to see pronouns in every game moving forward for no other reason than spite and to watch this guy's world melt. Those were your words on the matter. Fuck the consequences, fuck the context, and especially fuck the fact that he was absolutely right on everything he said. Don't get me wrong, when I heard his rant, I knew none of these things, and I didn't bother to look them up either. But unlike you, I didn't retweet and insult him, I didn't talk shit about him online, I didn't make videos, and I didn't throw hate his way. In my mind, I was more interested in how the rest of the game was, and so I didn't care. Little did I know that that rant was actually several hours into his playthrough and not even about the actual pronoun button. How ironic it was to see you months later discovering Sweet Baby Inc. and finding what they do to be sickening, when just a few months ago you were in love with the prospect of having that kind of ideological shit pumped into every game just out of spite. And how pathetic it was to see you playing victim when called out on it afterwards, acting like you had important receipts about the situation, when in reality the only receipts you had were only further proof of this attitude of yours, of not giving a shit about this matter, to the point where you couldn't even delay a video featuring him and his rant, with a complete lack of context, information or consideration from your part, or at least cut a part of it out to be able to have an actual discussion with the man a few days later. Although I guess I can say that I don't understand your selfish position. After all, the majority of that video was all about further shitting and shaming the man that you supposedly wanted to hash things out with, and speaking on the matter as if you actually knew what the fuck you're talking about, even though you just admitted in your DMs to be lacking context. A few days ago, when Andy Pants released his incredibly stupid video about how everything is gay and retarded, you said that it seemed as if he hadn't learned his lesson. It seems that you haven't learned yours either, which isn't even implying that some way, somehow, Melanie's tweet about the chief looking feminine is going to become the Nostradamus moment of 2024, where next year it is revealed that John is now Joanne or some shit. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying though, is that you carry on with the same attitude that got you looking like a clown last year, or rather, earlier this year, and that carries on making you look like a clown every time that you tackle this topic and completely miss the point, misrepresent the facts, and choose to continue ignoring actual, worthwhile and complicated situations, while instead choosing to argue against delusional hypotheticals that are not representative of anything of value that is even relatable to the real concerns in the minds of the people who initiate these back and forths online, that often turn into toxic battlegrounds because of people who do the exact same thing that you do in your video and in your tweets, which is to assume that they're just a bunch of drooling morons, that suddenly, after decades of diversity in video games, of gay and bi romance options, of kick-ass female protagonists, some way, somehow, these fucking people woke up bigoted, racist, phobic, and sexist. Like alt-right sleeper agents. Sure, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You see these discussions online and you end up misrepresenting the situation and generalizing everyone who uses certain words like woke or makes certain arguments in regards to DEI or anything else that you disagree with or that you don't approve of as digestible as fucking morons, retards, or in Az's case, shit-eating cavemen. And then you move on with your day, asserting the unhinged takes from some members of your fanbase and further forming your view of these matters from inside of that echo chamber, like the non-existence of a single anti-woke complaint that matters, or of Melanie Mac being a fake gamer who doesn't even play video games, when even someone like me, who doesn't know her or her content, was able to quickly find that she literally plays video games on fucking streams. You put up a facade that you are open to discussions, but your actual intentions are cloudy as fuck, to say the best. Because your demeanor has not changed at all. Even after being exposed to the doorway to all this crap with Sweet Baby Inc., your demeanor has not changed. You haven't bothered correcting past statements, nor see the landscape through a new lens that refrains from demonizing people you disagree with. You are incapable of at least trying to understand the place that a person is coming from, incapable of doing a little computing in your mind to try and see that, okay, I think I can see what might be a concern to them, especially when this stuff has a track record of failure, and then incapable of trying to engage with them to change their mind if that would be your desire to do so. At the very least, I don't know, man, just own it. Don't put up the facade that you're willing to have a moderate discussion with people who think differently, when in actuality, you just blow up at them online. Don't start a video where you're going over some retarded woke list by saying that it's no secret that companies are sometimes pushing agendas in media, pop culture and video games, and then leaving it at that, not elaborating on a single instance of it, and proceeding to make the entire rest of the video about how ridiculous these supposed people are.
Look, okay, it's no secret that companies are sometimes pushing agendas in media, pop culture, video games, and whatnot. Bloons Tower Defense 6 is woke now, fellas. It's been compromised. It contains overtly pro-LGBTQ+ messaging.
It's a person. I don't know what fucking guy made this list either, but this isn't a people. This isn't these people that you're trying to paint all of us to yourself and to your audience with a broad-ass brush as a representation of those damn political ideologue parasites online. It's very lovely to drop a, "Hey guys, I know that there's sometimes this and that," just to perish the thought that you're as deep inside of a fucked up bubble as the guy who made that list. That useless little statement serves only to give yourself an out, to give yourself some wiggle room, and to paint yourself as a person who is actually in the know about all of these matters. And so, when you say that someone is a shit-eating caveman or a retard, that's because they are, because you are the act man, and you know what you're talking about. Even though you never talk about it at all, you flap around on the surface pretending like you do by replying to moronic shit like that woke list, or by talking to Andy Pants, or shitting on people on Twitter. Your constant inability to actually engage with this topic, your complete dissonance, using political ideologues who masquerade as gaming content creators invading our gaming space, without a single acknowledgement or condemnation of the ones in the actual positions of power, influence, and literal fucking control over the games in our gaming space, shows where your intentions are. This thing that you claim to hate so much, this toxic environment of turning game discourse political through ideologues and whatever else, if this thing is a problem for you, then they, the people in charge of these companies, in control of these franchises, are the perpetrators of the original sin. You're turning your shitty blame the wrong way. It is because of them that this toxic climate has established itself in the entertainment discourse. It is because of them pushing and pushing and pushing, never knowing when to stop, that the bubble has burst. People are unable to ignore it anymore. People are unable to tolerate it any longer, unable to pretend like it's all fine, and unable to keep quiet about it because of fear of backlash from morons who just label them as bigots for daring to have an opinion. And now the stage is set for all that follows, including unhinged extremists on both sides, using it to boost their voices, including people like Andy wanting to profit from it. And of course, content creators and influencers who are passionate about this shit, and in some cases, like Az, who already knew about all of this shit before the bubble burst in the first place. People like Melanie expressing an opinion that triggers the fuck out of you, and people like myself, sick of seeing the same reductive, misrepresentative shit being spouted by people like yourself and people in the media. You think the average fucking person wants the video game discourse to devolve into this? You think the average person likes to find their gaming pages and communities totally dominated by toxic political shit? You think that this shit just popped up on its own, solely by the hands of people? Are you insane?
Some people are really fucking stupid. Did you ever notice that? How many really stupid people you run into during the day? You'll be listening to some guy.
What's up, everybody? This is the woke man here.
This guy is fucking stupid!
Cut the act, just be yourself. At least it's more respectable and you can stop hypocritically presenting yourself to your audience as this factual voice of reason who is solely invested in the truth and who doesn't choose a side in a sea of grifters and parasites who just pretend to care while invading your space with political agendas that are totally not there already in full force on crystal clear display through several studios and publishers in the AAA space, further adhering into the same DEI bullshit that has been killing Disney franchises. We have a clear window with the view as to where this shit is leading us to. Flop after flop after flop through MCU Phase 4, Disney Star Wars, Doctor Who, and even individual stuff like Indiana Jones. And it's more than present outside of Disney too. Robin Hood, Cleopatra, She Said, Velma, Bros, Rings of Power, etc. Not all because of the quote-unquote woke. Again, I hate the word and I prefer to just identify the problems on their own. However, there are many ideological facets that influence not just the content, but sometimes the staff itself, by appointing directors, writers, and actors, by handing the gigs based off of ideological motives, rather than the simple, good old-fashioned, foolproof plan of being the right person for the job. It's been happening in force over there first, and it's absolutely the direction that the games industry is headed into. Except, unlike Disney, with their trillions of dollars and their ties to shit like BlackRock, the games industry is not going to be left just as unscathed. Video games take too much money, time, and effort to produce. A single flop can be catastrophic, especially with the insane amount of money that these studios are blowing away on these projects these days, costing multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. Spider-Man 2 being an egregious example of $315 million for a game you can fully complete in 23 hours. 2024 was a year of several project cancellations, many layoffs, and even some studio shutdowns. BlackRock and governmental funding for DEI-fueled trash like Dustborn is not going to be enough to make up for the possible flops in the horizon from an industry that is increasingly investing into its bullshit and treating their consumers like trash. Falling into the same disgusting, arrogant attitude that awashed Hollywood as they constantly attack their fan bases and refuse to make content for them, and then call them outright for criticizing it when it sucks, completely forgetting who it was in the first place that made all of these pieces of media successful. Their own fan bases, the ones who went out and got tickets to watch movies, or who tuned in to watch their shows, or pre-ordered their games, or who clocked out on a Friday, ran to the game store on their way home just to get the latest game and binge it all weekend long. They're forgetting who made them successful and pandering to such an insane minority of people, of whom several of them don't even give a shit about these pieces of media to begin with. The fact that none of this is enough of a motivation or a reason for you to speak so passionately and so irately against, but some random girl saying that the Master Chief looks like a chick is just fucking amazing to me. In closing, I leave you with this message. I hope you take it to heart.
Fuck you and fucking Facebook. Fuck you and social media. It's all about you, you dumb motherfucker. Get up, grab your balls. Hug your wife, kiss the kid, pick up the fucking dog. Stop it. Stop it. It's not all Obama's fault. You don't want Ebola? Take your vitamin C, you dumb motherfucker. You don't want ISIS to fuck with you? Stay in New Jersey.
You don't want ideologues fucking with your entertainment medium and bringing unhinged politics into the space, then call the actual shit out.
But stop your fucking crying. You're a fucking American, you fucking douchebag. Start acting like it.
But anyway, that's all I had to say. If you liked the video, please show the like button some love down there, and if you have any thoughts or feedback, let me know in the comments. If you're an Act-Man fan, and you hated it, well, I mean, you're probably not even listening this far into it anyway, but hey, I welcome any discourse. Just try and be respectful, because I didn't come in your house and shit on your carpet now, did I? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.